Katie Johansen Gordette, and this is Crash Course World History. And today we're going to be talking about the Battle of the Bulge. Everyone loves a good comeback story. The Karate Kid, Miracle, Rocky, they lift your spirits and make you feel like you can actually do something with your life. The Battle of the Bulge is a real-life comeback story that was extremely beneficial to World War II.
Miss Gordette, I love the Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off.
Wow, it's like you actually did it instead of sit on your couch, be lazy, and eat popcorn.
I always get out of my seat and jump around because it's totally flames, dude.
Totally Flames, yeah. In about 20 years, Totally Flames isn't going to be as lit as you thought it was now. Alright, so you've probably heard a lot about the Battle of the Bulge from your books, your boring history teacher, or even your grandparents. Today we're not going to bore you with the history facts you already know, but instead we will tell you about how this major battle shows that hard work and bravery can help you achieve your goals. Let's start with some insight. The German forces had 25 divisions that managed to muster up about 250,000 troops, withholding 600 tanks and over 2,000 guns. The U.S. fell very short in these regards, with only 80,000 troops, 400 tanks, and 400 guns. In 1944, the Ardennes region of Belgium was the frontier between the Allies and Nazi Germany, the Allies being France, Britain, and of course, the U.S. On December 16th, 14 divisions consisting of 250,000 German troops made a sneak attack on the 80,000 American troops. Of course, as egotistical as Hitler was, he thought that his troops would be able to launch a successful attack against the Allies. Colonel Dixon was the only person who said anything about how he thought the Germans would make a sneak attack, although he didn't expect the battle to reach the extent that it did. And even if he did, would you believe a ridiculous suspicion like that?
After about a day of intense fighting, the Germans, who were also aided by the weather, broke through the American front, seizing key crossroads surrounding most of an infantry division. This initial attack created this projection, therefore giving the battle its now known name.
The American 7th Division was able to stop Germany from moving further in on their territory. The weather aided both sides because once Germany was stopped, they had to push through tough conditions and heavy snow, with the Americans also in their way. When Hitler first suggested his idea of sending his troops into battle, his officers were extremely doubtful of their ability to succeed due to lack of troops and weapons from previous fighting. Many officers knew that this would have to be their final attempt at winning the war.
"We gamble everything now," Gerd von Rundstedt said when he had learned of Hitler's order for a major offensive on the Western Front. "We cannot fail."
In result of this reaction, Hitler developed two new panzer armies.
The 5th Panzer was a large command formation comprised of armored units forming to defend Tunisia against Allied attacks, while the 6th Panzer was used as more of an offensive force operating as the northernmost force of the Germans.
The success of the German offensive troops was dependent on capturing the Allied forces' key locations. One of these locations, the city of Bastogne, was one of the most important. Bastogne was defended by America's 101st Airborne Forces.
When the Germans' commander requested that they surrender, the Allies' commander, General McAuliffe, famously replied, "Nuts."
This fight was one of the most deadly because the Germans focused several of their divisions on one location. After the first initial attack on the Western Front, Roosevelt made the decision to make the troops' main force on defending. Theodore Roosevelt's rationale to make this move made the Germans unable to gain any more land than after their first initial breakthrough. The difference in the United States and German weapons were exceptionally in the favor of the Germans. The Germans had Panzerkampfwagen, or Panther tanks, which were superior to the American M4 Sherman in almost every respect. Eventually, in the battle, the American war industry had been supported by a motivated workforce and had produced nearly 50,000 Shermans, more tanks than the Germans and Great Britain made during the entire war. Germans had been relying on forced labor to create their tanks, therefore limiting their production to around 6,000 Panthers. With all of their superiorities, in only 2 days, the Germans had advanced 60 miles. Both sides were not properly supplied. The Allied forces were drastically under-equipped, lacking insulated coats, adequate gloves, and watertight boots. The troops' flaws, especially with their boots, led to frostbite, and some even froze to death. A surprising 3,000 men were taken out of commission due to the clothing errors. Throughout the American side of the battle, stories were being spread of the huge massacre of soldiers and civilians in nearby cities, of paratroopers being dropped behind the lines, and of German soldiers disguised as American soldiers. The U.S. soldiers blamed their superiors for failing to notice the signs of attack. Former soldiers describe the attack and often say that they knew that something was happening behind enemy lines.
I pushed my way through the disorganized units with a Sherman tank, primarily infantry, running for the rear, all of them screaming that the Germans were closing in. It was one of the most heartbreaking and humiliating sights I had witnessed since driving through the wreckage at the Kasserine Pass 2 years earlier. The Germans were indeed bending the rules of World War II. While the U.S. knew that the Germans were planning an attack, they were too busy freezing their butts off to notice the clues that were right in front of them. They thought that since the Ardennes region was so rugged, Germany would find it unsuitable to launch an attack. However, Hitler's plans were extremely well thought out and quite crafty.
The battle ended during the first week of January during 1945. The momentum that Germany had gained during their initial attack had been lost. Though Germany was running out of supplies and struggling to stay warm during the winter, they fought incredibly hard to achieve their goal and definitely gave the Allies a run for their money. Their errors remained in their secrecy of the attack. Because everything was kept a secret from everybody except the highest powers, much of the supplies was placed on the wrong side of the Roer River. This made it extremely difficult to get food and fuel to the soldiers. Hitler finally withdrew from the battle on January 7th, and the Allies quickly took back all of the land they had lost by January 28th, and then said the Germans had failed in their efforts. When interviewed, many German officers said that there were inept leaders on the battlefield characterized by Dietrich, who fought bravely and fiercely, but overall lacked the capacity to command such large bodies of troops. They only reached their positions on their unquestioned loyalty to the Nazi leadership. The Allies credited their victory to the bravery and loyalty of the troops, allowing them to recover from the surprise offensive and recover the land that had been lost. Oh, look at that! It's time for the open letter. An open letter to the Allies Air Force. But first, let's see what's in the secret compartment today. Oh, look at that! That's so cool! Meow, meow, meow. An open letter to the Allied forces. Dear Allied forces, at first you guys were zero help. From December 16 to December 22nd, the weather wasn't allowing you to go help your fellow countrymen defend the Ardennes region. Finally, on the 23rd, the snow turned to sun, and you guys finally started launching attacks on key cities. Overall, your 8th and 9th Air Forces were a major key to success, destroying 11,000 transport vehicles, 1,000 tanks, over 7,000 trains, and about 40 bridges. Even though you couldn't help much in the beginning, you really came through at the end and helped demolish Germany's army. Best wishes, Acadia. Let's go over all this information again. First, the Germans launched a sneak attack on the Allies, causing major disruptions, and Germany was quickly able to take land and move forward. Germany outnumbered the Allies with 250,000 troops and 80,000 troops, which made it extremely difficult for the Allies to stand their ground. Then we have the Allied soldiers blaming their superiors for failing to notice these sneak attacks. Then both sides struggled to maintain land and ways to get supplies. Finally, Germany gave up on their offensive attack and withdrew from the battle. The Allies attributed their victory to bravery and loyalty in key locations, while Germany was unable to control massive amounts of troops, causing them to lose their momentum and ultimately lose the battle. And now I leave you with a small piece of inspiration. This battle shows that even in the toughest of situations, if you work hard and be brave, you can win any battle you choose.
Crash Course Lesson the World is produced and directed by Libby and Acadia.
The show is created by our high school history teacher, Katie Stack.
And our informational consultant is Leah McGuire. Thanks for watching Crash Course West in the World.
Next week, we'll be discussing Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton.
Until next time, keep being awesome.